Welcome to Salve, a therapeutic podcast for digital ailments. We're here to ease your online aches and entrepreneurial anxieties, one session at a time. With our host, Jordan Brannon, and today's guest, Rich Matukaitis from Rebuy Engine. Today's worrying condition, the memory loss that causes you to forget who your customers are.
Welcome back, everyone. I am Jordan Brannon, the host of Salve and co-founder of Coalition Technologies, a leading digital agency focused in e-commerce. We are excited to be back with you today to be treating your pains, treating your ailments. And we've got a special guest on the call with us today, Rich Matukaitis. It's pronounced like hepatitis and meningitis, just since we're sticking with that medical theme. But don't make the mistake of calling him by either of those. I don't know that he would take it favorably, despite being a really nice guy. Rich, would you mind giving us a little bit of an introduction and your background in e-commerce and who you're working with and what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. Great intro, by the way. And that actually stems from way back in high school. The same question would be asked me all the time. How do you pronounce your last name? So the hepatitis, meningitis, Matukaitis seem to land pretty well. But yes, my name is Rich Matukaitis, Lithuanian last name.
Awesome.
But yeah, my name is Rich. I work with the agency partnerships team at Rebuy Engine. I've been with the company for just over 3 years, half of which was spent building with some of our largest brands and helping them optimize their strategy, implement Rebuy site-wide, and essentially just work with them on their growth goals. Prior to that, I was at Shopify for about 4 years. And then prior to my e-commerce journey, I actually am a business owner myself. I've been a hairdresser since about 2009. So worked in salons, film and television, all of that. And then while growing my own business and automating that process is when I discovered Shopify. And then decided to just take the leap completely because I just became obsessed with working with brands, people who took an idea and turned it into something tangible. And then, yeah, I've just been kind of trudging along ever since. So for the last about year and a half, I now work with some of our biggest partners across the agency ecosystem and essentially position them with another tool in their belt to help accomplish their clients' goals. So in a nutshell, Rebuy essentially is an all-in-one e-commerce personalization platform.
Okay.
And what that means is essentially we build for Shopify and Shopify Plus merchants, and we cover things like search, collections, cart and merchandising, post-purchase, checkout, all of that. So essentially, we're your one-stop platform to increase your AOV, boost your conversion, and essentially help remedy anything that might be ailing your current store's performance.
Awesome. The call out of having a background as a hairstylist is intimidating for me since I'm like in the post-Bieber, pre-Trump sort of era of hairstyles, and I'm not sure which direction I'm going. So I might have to follow up with that later. I don't know if part of the Salve treatment is like 40-year-old Caucasian male hairstyling options, but we again, maybe a separate episode before I go too far down that path and expose all of my insecurities along the way.
We can talk.
I want to dial in on this pain point, this ailment. I'm going to call it a short-term memory loss, this sense of like forgetting who your customers are. They visit your site and immediately you just seem somewhat unfamiliar with them. That's going to be what we're trying to treat today. We're heading into Black Friday, Cyber Monday. How is that pain point, that ailment going to show up for most Shopify merchants or e-commerce merchants in general? Like, what is the thing that says like, hey, you might need to see a doctor about this?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things in the way that it can manifest. And I think especially when we think in the context of Black Friday, I mean, for everyone, site-wide, server-wide, Shopify-wide, we're just regardless going to experience a huge influx in traffic. Yeah. So when we talk about, and I think the ailment that I'd love to address is almost like the tech stack bloat. So essentially how app overload can hurt your performance, your profit, your customer experience, and how to remedy that. So I think it can manifest through a number of different ways, one of which would be site speed or performance, fragmented data, inconsistent customer journeys or experiences. So it can actually show up in a few different ways that sometimes your pure kind of vanity metrics don't really capture until it's maybe a little bit too late.
Okay. So again, like if someone's there, they could be coasting along and they could be feeling pretty good about their Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but they could have this underlying health condition. Are there any benchmarks or things that Rebuy tracks or that you've seen yourself that are sort of helpful? Like you get into a conversation with a merchant, you're like, This is a problem. You should be able to remember Rich Matukaitis 5 minutes into our conversation. There's an issue here. Let's start talking about that and dealing with that. What are those sort of red flag moments for Rebuy and for your team?
Yeah, so like fantastic question. And I mean, again, when I think about the concept of app overload or app bloat, it's essentially like a hidden tax that brands are paying that they rarely account for. So when we talk about installing anywhere from 8 to 10 apps, you might just be solely looking at like the licensing fee for each app or the features, but you don't always account for the cost of things like slow page loads, fragmented customer data, feature overlap. And essentially what this does is dilutes your conversion funnel. So one simple statistic I'll say is like if you have, and I find that this is an average, anywhere from 8 to 10 apps providing, upsells, cross-sells, bundles, all of that, then you're effectively paying 8 times for something rather than investing in, one platform built for the job. So we've been in this situation before where, you've got like a common cold, but you're taking the echinacea, you're taking this, you're taking this, you're taking this, but you have no idea what's actually driving that kind of like healing or that remedy. So the hidden cost with that is not just like a slower experience, but, rather than investing in something, we invest in just a total solution. So something that's going to tackle everything with a strategy rather than just kind of throwing everything at a wall and, hoping to see what sticks. So basically the pitch that I give to brands is like, make your tech stack a strategic engine, not just a feature landfill. We can pack in all of this stuff, but if we can't really figure out what's driving that, then we're going to be taking a bunch of stuff that we probably don't even need and will be impossible to trace what actually had, the biggest impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, when we audit Shopify merchants, we typically are seeing about 12 apps. That's sort of typical for us as we're getting into an audit. And that's kind of average. So the high end can actually be over 20. Of late, we've seen Shopify with OS 2.0 get a lot better at handling app uninstalls and when you're canceling a subscription. But before that, man, you could have these, we'd get to these sites and they'd have just this perpetual load icon going in the background of the browser, which to a human, they may not have noticed that something hadn't finished loading, but to a crawler like from Google, it looked like a giant red flag that this was the slowest site ever. So definitely like that consolidation back to a common app is a big benefit from an SEO standpoint and the user experience. There's a lot of different wins there. Talk to me a little bit about the value of that sort of single treatment and why perhaps that sort of disconnected, multi-pronged approach may not work well. You mentioned like the someone who grabs the echinacea, hits the peppermint essential oils, drinks a medicinal tea, does some Vicks Vapor Rub on the chest, and then hangs upside down for 3 days to cure the cold. Like, why not just go to the doctor, right? Like, that's sort of, I think, what we're talking about here with Rebuy.
Yeah. And I think, again, like to go back to the whole consolidation thing, and I think this is like remedying any ailment. It's less about just having fewer apps. It's more about fewer silos, one strategic engine, and then a map to each one of those KPIs. So figuring out, okay, how can we consolidate everything and how can we simplify this? So first of all, I'll break this down into a few separate steps. So your audit. So essentially, let's list every app in your tech stack, and let's map each one of those business KPIs to what the actual app is giving back. So we can remedy this, let's say, by you've been trying all of these things. Let's take a look at which each one of these, remedies is addressing and see which ones are actually meeting that impact or actually having that, ideal outcome. So then from there, that audit, that allows us to identify any overlap or gaps. So let's find where 2 apps are doing the same thing. Do we have, 2 pop-up tools? Do we have no post-purchase offer? And essentially where we're missing from that unified view. So not necessarily just removing everything for the sake of it or adding everything for the sake of it, but just really identifying what's driving the most impact and where can we stand to get rid of a few of these things by one treatment that will solve for everything. So then once we've done that, we can then select the platform that's going to help check off those boxes where we already have a solution that exists, but maybe we've got a platform that exists and kind of wraps that into one treatment. So then we would select the platform. So let's pick a tool like Rebuy that covers most of those major functions or remedies, majority of what it is that you're looking to solve for. And then from there, we can look at migrating or uninstalling certain things. So once we've consolidated that, and we've got everything unified into one spot, that's when we can really start to effectively measure and optimize. So now that we've got everything funneling into one spot, we're going to get cleaner data, we're going to get faster load times, we're going to get fewer conflicts, and this essentially will allow the brand to iterate faster than they would if they're trying to aggregate data across 8 different touch points and Shopify. It creates a bit of a headache with no real treatment, to pull from.
Yeah. I know what with looking at just the list of things that Rebuy does, they're probably the most commonly installed apps because they're some of the places where you expect to see the biggest wins and the biggest gains. You know, that personalization, the upsell, cross-sell type functionality. Merchants sort of looking for like, how do I do better in core KPIs that are just critical for an e-com business? Those are the first apps they're installing. And you're starting to set up these sort of divergent paths where the outcome is actually pretty ambiguous. And so Rebuy helps consolidate that. Talk to me a little bit about just maybe some, we'll call them home remedies. So you are a merchant, you're in that spot of, I have installed a couple of different apps. Maybe there's just not enough time this holidays for me to switch over, get onto Rebuy. What are some base optimizations that you would suggest with your expertise and your background that will probably help get some wins during key selling seasons that are right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, if I had to pick one thing for a merchant to fix, I'd probably say focus on your cart and your checkout experience. So, specifically, how are your upsell and bundling post-purchase kind of logics integrated or not, and why? So, essentially, this is your high intent real estate. So, the user has already decided to purchase. So, any friction or conflicting upsell logic is going to cost you money. So, one thing that I would say is consolidating your upsell, cart, bundle apps into one streamlined solution. You'll see that the kind of fastest return on that effort. The load time improves, offers become more coherent, the UX becomes smoother, which ultimately translates to higher conversion, especially if we think about tools that integrate with Rebuy like Klaviyo. You can leverage those segments and what you know about your customer to make sure that your offers across all channels are consistent.
Hmm.
So, for example, are we selling a first-time offer to somebody who's already subscribed to your product? Are we selling a product that they've already purchased before? Are we making recommendations to a customer for a bathing suit in the middle of December that's shopping from England? So
Yeah.
there's ways in which we can really optimize the way we merchandise products. But I think at the end of the day, without even really having to go too far into the personalization play, checkout should be always your number one priority in terms
Hmm.
of getting that customer who's bought in through to that order confirmation page as quickly
Yep.
as possible.
Yep. Yep. It's such a good call out because what we've usually find is, and I talk about this a lot with merchants, is that when people get to checkout and they leave, something went wrong. Like you
Yeah.
don't add to cart and go to checkout as a customer. Just think about this personally, and then want to leave that checkout behind. Like that's a very like I think about my personal experience. I'll check out the cart, like I'll put stuff together and see what the totals are. I'll use it to sort of comparison, like, do I want this one? Do I want that one? But once I hit that checkout flow, I'm expecting to be buying something. And if I bail on that cart, if I'm abandoning that cart in checkout, something's gone sideways. And that's a place where, again, there's a lot of win opportunities for merchants really quickly if they start to think about what is it that's driving that bail? Is it the shipping price? Is it the actual upsell, cross-sell opportunities we're missing? Do I not recognize this customer? So I do appreciate that call. It's a really helpful one. Um, Over the course of the holiday season, there is, I think, you have people in this sort of open pocketbook mindset. What are some best practices maybe outside of checkout and things that, again, could be done with Rebuy specifically, but also maybe outside of Rebuy are also available to Shopify merchants and other e-commerce merchants?
Yeah, I mean, again, like really just focusing on the data that you do have available to you. So, for example, like we shouldn't be giving the same treatment to your loyal VIP customers as you are to a new customer. So, I think really just understanding your ICP, leveraging the data that you do have already to be able to craft an experience that is optimized for the first time buyer and for your most loyal VIP customer. So, things like on-site navigation. If you're directing everybody from your, Black Friday ad copy and you've got this incredible promo and they click on that ad and you're bringing them to a homepage where that product isn't even front and center,
Yeah.
already we are competing with, I'm talking about fractions of a second in order to keep
Yeah.
that person bought in. So things like product discovery, surfacing your Black Friday deals, segmenting the experience if you're sending one offer to your VIPs, one offer to new customers, and one to just organic traffic, making sure that you test out that process and what that funnel looks like from, discovery or just, landing on site all the way through to post-purchase. What does that look like? And is there anywhere else that we can optimize that? I think the big thing now, I mean, we're kind of in the weeds now, but I already start testing this with a lot of agencies and their brands in October. What can
Yeah.
we start soft launch that we can basically wash, rinse, repeat and set up now so that when Black Friday comes, we just basically get to sit back and watch the numbers roll in. But
Yeah.
Again, this stuff will only be as effective as the data that you're leveraging to be able to create these experiences. If your customer data lives across 4 or 5 different sources of truth, you're already going to have to spend that amount of time to make sure that these things are, consistent, accurate, and are actually effective in guiding the way that you either merchandise or optimize the online store.
Yeah. And I do think that that idea of like checking it out from the customer perspective is so critical, because if we're dealing with this memory loss sort of as our analogy, sometimes it's not really obvious to you because you've forgotten what you should have remembered. And so actually jumping in and sort of thinking like, hey, what is the customer journey and what could be improved? I was doing a demo for a merchant yesterday, and they have a membership program where you subscribe and save.
Yeah.
And we were comparing some experiences. On one hand, we were looking at a coming in off of like a Google product listing ad. I was shopping on Google. I am now coming to your site. I chose your product. I'm starting getting hot to buy. If I am forced immediately into a login screen and I am gated, I'm
Nope.
done. I'm out.
Yeah.
And versus like that experience, the comparison I was able to show them was like, hey, coming in as that new customer, and I'm not necessarily expecting a VIP discount. Like, I have the chance to interact with the product, add to cart. When I go to cart, there is now this create account sort of step that's required. Flip
Yeah.
that over to the members. The members themselves, obviously, they sort of know to sign in. And so the email copy, everything else should say like, hey, sign in as a member to see sort of best pricing and things like that. So
Of course. And I think as well, keep in mind, if you're running a promo that's bigger than your subscribe and save, like opt-in, email opt-in, get rid of that completely during Black Friday. If your overall deal is 30% off site-wide, but your email opt-in is 10% off, get rid of the email opt-in for now, because you're going to capture it regardless. So it's these little tweaks that you can make to really make sure that in the age of, amnesia and distraction and, attention deficit, it's like there's so many things that I myself even struggle with, but the right stores know how to capture that attention, deliver exactly what it is that they think you're looking for. And a lot of this work has to be done beforehand. So for newer brands, your retention starts before you've even made that sale, especially if you're in the CPG space. What are you doing to optimize the flow once that first purchase has been made? What are you doing to make sure that that person doesn't just buy once for the savings during Black Friday, but actually becomes that advocate down the line?
Yep. Yeah. Such a good call out, especially in that CPG category where that repeat purchase is just so critical, because that product is going to be consumed somehow. That's in the brand name. I mean, or in the category name, we kind of know that that's going away. So talk to me a little bit about some of maybe, let's talk about the timeline of treatment. So you talked about starting in October. By the time this episode goes live, we'll probably be just into Cyber Week, actually. So we'll have a little bit of a stretch before Christmas and before some New Year's, sort of, we got that post-purchase. Like, I've got all my items, I'm going to return them all. I'm going to start buying some more stuff again. Like, what's sort of the timeline that some of these things can be solved for, maybe with Rebuy, and then also just kind of looking at just in general?
Yeah, I think again, so setting up exactly what you're looking to accomplish during Black Friday, I think, as we know, the cost per customer acquisition completely significantly goes up. So things like Meta ads, TikTok ads, have you been laying the groundwork leading up to BFCM to start warming people up to going to you when they know that those deals are going to hit? So are you actively posting across channels where, your customers might prefer to shop from? Do you offer the ability to, shop from Instagram, shop from TikTok, shop through an SMS prompt? All of these things need to be optimized so that wherever your customer is choosing to shop with you from, they're going to get an experience that doesn't seem fragmented. So selecting which channels you're going to focus on, I think, is the first step. And then again, identifying who your customer base is. You're going to get a lot of first-time buyers. So even something as simple as a checkbox saying, is this a gift? This will let you know what types of follow-up emails to send. If you're like, hey, how was that product? Like, it wasn't even for me. I bought it for someone else. Versus if they check, yes, this is a gift for someone, but that's their first purchase, maybe you send a follow-up that invites them to purchase the same product at a little bit more of a discount. So what are we doing to collect data leading up to this point that we can then leverage after that point as a retention tool? I think these are all things that will just set you up for success, so that again, come Q1, when we get that inevitable slump, that, brain fog, the fatigue, how can we solve for that with remedies that are already available to the people that have just spent, like a blackout period of just like, oh my gosh, I've spent so much money, I've done this, and that kind of like remorse, that back in body experience is what starts to creep up. So there's a lot of ways in which you can eliminate that sort of fatigue just by the experience you provide after the fact. So during Black Friday, you should not be really changing too much or altering anything. You kind of just have to let it be what it is so that you can predict the outcome post.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good call. And I do think like the underlying theme of just make sure you understand your data, make sure you're collecting good data, and then making sure you're using it is so apparent. It's like you go to the doctor's office and they ask you like, how long has this been going on? Like they kind of want to know like, have you had this persistent like memory fog for a day? And did you not get any sleep last night because you've got a bunch of little kids? Or is this like been going on for 2 years now and it's worsening? Like they're looking to sort of understand like what's the good data, what's the actual thing that's happening. And I think we can do the same thing from a merchant standpoint of saying, I want to have these cues. Is this a gift? Is this someone who's purchasing for other people? Are they in the same demographic group? A lot of times I do see that go sideways with the setup for Black Friday and for Christmas. There is this assumption that everybody is gift giving, and most studies that we've done show like 60% of purchases are for self. They're not actually for gift giving. Like people are buying for themselves. Yep. Oh, I know. Like I've bought 2 things for myself. I've got a box sitting over here in the corner already as my Christmas gift to me. Treat yourself.
Well, and with that, it's about understanding as well what products you're selling to people. If you're selling something that has like a lifetime of, let's say, 30 days, like my perfect example, if you're like something like this. Like if you're buying like an Ollie gummy and take a month to have an effect, you're not going to reach out a week later and be like, how are you feeling? Did we change your life yet? It's like, well, what do you mean? Like I haven't even gotten there. So at that point, it becomes this question of like, do they even really understand what they've just sold me? Is this gimmicky? So you know, maybe even following up with the email saying, hey, by this point, you should be experiencing, or, you know, our users have experienced this remedy at this point. Within the next 2.5 weeks, you'll experience this. Create a little bit of enablement content around it. Offer some more tips outside of just trying to sell more product. Show that you actually back the solution that you're selling, even if it's a shirt. You know what I mean? We're not going to send an email the week after Christmas being like, hey, we just launched this new thing and you should buy it. I think being sensitive to the economy, people's spending habits, the overall sentiment once January rolls around, like these are all things that we need to consider that I think a lot of brands overlook. They're just like pump. The more I can stay top of mind, the more we'll capture that business. The quicker you will catch the unsubscribe button, and that is going to cost you even more to get them back versus retaining them in the first place, right?
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, and also like one of those things of like when you actually start to think about your product, how it's going to be used, when the benefits received or enjoyed, it also gets you into that right communication flow, not just for an upsell or cross-sell, but also just into a good customer service situation. One of the things we often will find when we come into a new brand is that reviews have become the primary means that customers get support, which is tragic, right? Like when people are out there like publishing like, everything went sideways with shipping and all this. It's just like, like something got disconnected. And those follow-ups, like you called out, like a week and a half in, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, like, hey, how are things going? If things aren't quite to this sort of level of expectation, here's some tips and tricks. They start to cut off a lot of that negativity, and they can be a real positive in terms of building brand awareness and communication with customers out there too.
Yeah. Well, and also think about if you're packaging and fulfilling all of your own orders, think about everything, even past once the order has been placed. How is that unboxing experience?
Yeah.
You even insert something that, I mean, I know this isn't scalable for everybody, but handwritten notes go a long way. I feel like there's machines that do that now.
Yep.
It's something as simple as like the prescription. It's like take twice daily, You can include something in the box that says, hey, we're so glad that you're on board with this product. We also have some more recommendations that might make sense down the line. Once we've treated this ailment, let's go or . But you can start planting those seeds that make the suggestions more organic. You can invite them to a blog maybe that speaks about the benefits of what they're using. And in that blog, you can pepper in other products that will complement it. This goes a long way versus just the generic, like, hey, buy this. We are not in the age where people want to be sold at anymore. They want to be spoken to. So I think if you remove that outcome of just trying to sell more things and actually remind yourself, the brand, of what solution you're providing, then you can speak to that solution ad nauseum and it won't get old. But I think it's when we start offering these arbitrary suggestions, like you're not going to prescribe somebody a medicine for something that's treating something completely different. Like you would lose their trust. You know, they would look at you a little bit crazy and they'd probably just go to one of your competitors or a different doctor and be like, okay, this is what they recommended. And that person will double down on how the recommendation you made was no bueno. And then they leave a review, then nobody trusts you, and then you're back at square one.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like this theory, I think, of being able to like get an exchange of value out of some of this. Like, I think so often marketers think that we just have to give away, we have to give away. And customers today are pretty savvy. They know like they can get discounts by shopping and waiting. And so like, but they're also online all the time. Like we spend more time in front of a screen than we do sleeping, which
Yeah.
might speak to some of the health issues we'll talk about during the course of the show. But, we're in that spot of like, hey, I can use some of what I've learned about you to actually put you back into some level of engagement where there's actually a quid pro quo. There's an exchange of ideas, communication, content. I talked to a marketer who actually said, like, I want to know what funnel they came in from, and I want to know what kind of content they engaged with,
First.
because my exchange is going to be, I'm going to put them right back into that funnel with that kind of content or something that will complement it, because I'm going to increase the likelihood of a repeat purchase later if I do that.
Yeah, totally. And I think, again, this is where having an optimized tech stack comes into play because, again, we can deliver these experiences if we have everything set up, if we have
Hmm.
clean data. And, excuse me, to go back to this point, it's like, again, with a bloated tech stack, like you're killing conversion by choking the performance of your online store, right? So
Yep.
like with every app, you're adding weight, you're adding JavaScript, you're adding CSS, network calls, layout shifts, like all of this cumulatively creates slower, less stable shopping experiences. So you might not even make it to that conversion in the first place if you
Yep.
don't have an online store that is optimized with data you can leverage accurately. And I
Yep.
mean, one example that I can highlight is there's a few different brands we've done this for, but a beauty brand that we were working with was running 12 apps combined for
Hmm.
pop-up, cart upsells, recommendations, bundle search, post-purchase, and their site was lagging. So after
Of
we were
course.
able to consolidate all of that into one platform, we offboarded 8 apps. Their load time dropped by around, I want to say like 1.5 seconds, which again
Hmm.
is like 2 hours in
Yeah. Right.
in
Small
relativity.
eternity.
Yeah, their
Yep.
AOV climbed around 10%. The
Wow.
checkout abandonment dropped 8%, and that was all within the first month. And we see
Mm.
this across the board. Actually, funny that I should mention this. Ollie was one brand that I think we increased it was like 63% was the subscription revenue
Wow.
and 5% lift just from the smart cart optimization alone.
Wow.
Same with
Crazy.
Dime Beauty, 11% increase in AOV just through Rebuy's smarter recommendations. So
Mm.
again, speaking to people, learning your product is ultimately what's going to, make the biggest difference to conversion and, retention and all of that. But if you're thinking about retention before you've even thought about all of the other things, you are going to spend a lot more money trying to pull them back and pry them back versus listening to them throughout the journey. And again, don't be afraid to ask your customers. So many people think that they're buying a product or the way that they position a product is the reason why people are buying it. But for
Yep.
me, I might be buying something for a completely different value prop that you're not even highlighting,
Yep.
right? I mean, to make a medical reference, like if we think about things like Ozempic, semaglutide, traditionally not used as a weight loss medication, but that's what a lot of people are using it for.
Right.
Ask your customers, why did you buy this in the first place? And all of a sudden, these are things you can do throughout the year leading up to busy season. All of a sudden now you found a way to reposition your product,
Yep.
and turns out 90% of your customers are also buying it for that reason when you're selling it as this. So
Yep.
there's a lot of different moving parts there that I think first party data, zero party data even, can really help move the needle. But I think everyone has this like Wizard of Oz mentality that like we're going to build and we're going to hope for the best. But it's like, no, if you involve people in that process, ask what flavors they want next or ask what other products they'd be interested in, all of a sudden now you get the stake. They almost feel like a stakeholder. So they're more likely to be bought in. They're more likely to come back. They're more likely to engage with your emails and stuff like that. So yeah, just a big kind of a holistic thing around,
Yep.
listen to your customers at the end of the day. Listen to your
Yeah.
customers and listen to your data.
Yep. Yeah. We kind of butt heads a little bit at times with people who are a little too much in the branding. I don't even know what's beyond the atmosphere. Something up there. Some space. But like I find oftentimes when I'm talking to people who do branding work, they sometimes get disconnected from like a concrete definition of brand that actually matters. Like I talk about to most of our clients, I'll say like brand is why people buy from you.
Yeah.
It's not some sort of visual experience. It's not sort of some assumptions or presentation. It's the reason people are buying from you. And
Yeah.
so like when we get into this sort of idea that my brand is premium, it's luxury, it's whatever that is,
Yeah.
before that's actually the reason people are buying from you, you're making a terrible mistake, and you're going to miss on your marketing communication a lot more often than you should.
Well, yeah, and your brand kit is not your brand ethos. Your why
Yeah.
should never change ever. If your why is still variable, then why are you even going to market at this point? I think
Yep.
that if you can't solidify and stand by your why, then you leave so much room for arbitrary changes that ultimately might bury your brand. And if essentially don't tell people what it is that your brand is doing, let your customers tell you what it's done for
Yeah.
them.
Mm-hmm.
right? So your brand is up to the customer. The success of your brand is up to the customers that buy it, not up to you telling them how successful and how great your product is.
Yeah.
That's a big misconception. You can tell me that, your product is the best on the market. I would hope that that's, bare minimum of what you believe in as part of your ethos. But
Right.
if you're telling me every step of the way why we're so good and I'm getting subpar results and subpar experience, then I don't care how good you think your product is. I'm going to find someone who's a little quieter, but more effective.
Yep. Yeah, I think I've that's always one of my favorite suggestions is go to your customer reviews and find out what customers say matters about you. That's where you build your sales. That's where you build your marketing. That's where you build your brand identity. And if you don't like what they're saying about you, then you've got to go back to the drawing board and figure out how you connect those dots more because again, if they don't believe it, you shouldn't either. So, before we close up today's
Yeah.
episode, I want to give you a chance to just kind of give me a little bit of a view of who Rebuy is right for or best for, perhaps.
Yeah.
And also because we've touched on it a couple times, it's called like, what's the typical implementation time to start in a conversation with you guys and go live? So, if you could answer those two questions for me.
Yeah. And I mean, again, like I'm now talking about how great we are. I'm not going to do that. But what I will say is that Rebuy is built for brands that are selling one product or brands that are selling 100,000 products. Rebuy is built for brands that are just making their first order and brands that are making their first order this second. Like we are built to scale, but digestible enough for brands that don't necessarily have a coding background or want
Mm-hmm.
to spend a lot of time, learning something that is maybe a mere one component of their overall commerce strategy. So what Rebuy does really well is help simplify the process of being able to iterate, adapt, and learn with your customers because essentially we offer merchandising solutions from the homepage all the way through to post-purchase and right into our integrations with other tech partners like Klaviyo, like Recharge. So when we're able to connect the dots and create one initial lift that you can then iterate on with just a couple of clicks, that's our superpower. So where
Yeah.
traditionally you are limited to static recommendations and static suggestions through Shopify's native functionality, what we're actually able to do is plug all of those boxes or all of those, kind of merchandising blocks within the theme. And we supercharge that with an engine that
Mm-hmm.
allows you to say, if your customer is shopping from England, let's call it a jumper instead of a sweater. If they're shopping from LA, let's show them bathing suits instead of sweaters. If they're shopping from Canada, let's speak to Boxing Day maybe instead of Black Friday. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ways that we can personalize while also consolidating. So if you're a brand that's just getting started and you're looking to make sense of I don't even know how many 100,000 apps in the App Store, I would say figure out what you're trying to accomplish, work with a team that you want to work with, and ultimately don't try and diagnose yourself. We don't go to the doctor and say, hey, I need this prescription. This is what's wrong with me. Definitely, have a pulse on that, but be open to suggestion. I think that the biggest hurdles that we often run into are like the rigidity that keeps brands stuck instead of keeping them malleable. So, be open to suggestions, be open to feedback, and trust that your partners are here to ultimately make you look like the hero, which in turn generates more revenue for your bottom line.
That's the
The more
win.
rigid you are, the more you're going to fight with yourself. Forget the data, forget all the personalization, forget the experience. The biggest hurdle will be the one that you put in front of yourself.
Awesome. Such good feedback. And then best way to get in touch with Rebuy and start this process of talking to the doctor. What's the way to do that?
Yeah, so you can book a demo or book your initial consultation by visiting rebuyengine.com. You'll see that there's a button there to request a demo. So if there's any features, or if you just want a comprehensive view of exactly what we can do, we can have someone from our sales team jump on a call with you and just walk you through. And again, keep in mind, this is not a one size fits all, a recommendation that we're going to make to everybody. Just like a doctor's appointment, we will prescribe the core features that will ultimately help accomplish what it is you're looking to solve for today. And then we'll make recommendations for how we can grow with you tomorrow.
Awesome. All right. Well, Rich, I so appreciate you being on the show with us today.
Yeah, thank
Again,
you.
Rebuy Engine is out there for you if you're feeling like you are losing track of who it is that you're speaking to. They've got some great solutions that definitely can lift this holiday season. I will stress, like, because we're in the middle of the holiday season, as we're recording this, it hasn't been Black Friday yet. By the time this airs, we'll probably still be in a key selling season. The sooner you get on this, either fixing the data, improving the personalization, the sooner you're going to see that benefit. And because it's peak season, it's going to matter even more. So definitely reach out to them and get that demo scheduled. And Rich, we'll have to have you back and we'll talk about my hair a little bit more in the future.
Yes,
right.
absolutely. And we've crafted a few exclusive offers for your extended network. So if you're
Awesome.
curious to learn more about that, please feel free to reach out to myself directly. I think we've included a special link that you can use, which will
Great.
unlock a few different things like extended trials, complimentary audits. So if you're curious, even at the minimum, to see what Rebuy can do for you, with no obligation, we're more than happy to just kind of poke some holes, but
Awesome.
not without offering some solutions for you on
Great.
the other end.
We'll actually have those in the show notes as well. So you can click through. You'll have Rich's contact information, his home address. And if you need to set up a hair appointment, apparently he's going to be available this holiday season.
Perfect. And the
So,
phonetic pronunciation of my last name as well, so as to not call me Rich Hepatitis.
yes. Well, man, just actually put that in there by accident. Like, what we keep, your IT team at Rebuy is like, we keep getting
Perfect.
these
That's
weird
your promo
emails.
code. Just mention hepatitis and we'll get you sorted.
Someone there on that marketing and sales org is going to be like, what the heck happened in this podcast?
Perfect.
All right, Rich, a pleasure. And thank you all for being with us today. And we look forward to helping you solve your ailments and your pains as we continue forward with Cyber Salve.
Happy selling.